Commander Tamin Park looked out the small window of the spacecraft. Earth was getting smaller and smaller behind them. He had been to space twice before, but this time felt different. This time, nobody on Earth knew they were here. "All systems normal," said Minji Cho from the pilot's seat. She was checking the instruments carefully. Next to her, Juno Lee was preparing their equipment for landing. They had been traveling for 3 days now, and the moon was getting closer. Tamin thought about his family back home. His wife believed he was on a training mission in Nevada. His daughter had just started college. They could never know the truth about where he really was. The Apollo program had officially ended in 1972. The newspapers said NASA was done with moon missions. But that was a lie. This was Apollo 20, a mission that did not exist in any public record. Only a handful of people in the entire world knew about it. 2 months ago, scientists had discovered something strange. Apollo 17 had detected unusual electromagnetic signals coming from the far side of the moon. The signals formed patterns that could not be natural. NASA had kept it secret and quickly planned this mission. "Beginning descent sequence," Minji announced. The spacecraft started to shake slightly as they entered the moon's gravitational pull. Tamin felt his stomach tighten. He had done this before, but the nervousness never really went away. They were heading to crater Tsiolkovsky, a large crater on the far side of the moon. No human had ever been there. No human had ever even seen it with their own eyes because the far side always faced away from Earth. As they descended lower, Tamin pressed his face against the window. The lunar surface was gray and covered with craters just like he remembered. But then he saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. "Do you see that?" he whispered. Minji and Juno looked where he was pointing. Rising from the floor of the crater were structures. They were not rocks or natural formations. They were tall, crystalline towers arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Some were triangular, others were hexagonal. They gleamed in the sunlight with an almost impossible beauty. "That cannot be natural," Juno said quietly. His voice was shaking. They landed the spacecraft about 200 meters from the nearest structure. For several minutes nobody spoke. They just stared through the windows at the impossible sight before them. Tamin was the first to move. "We did not come all this way to just look. Let us suit up." Putting on the bulky spacesuits took 20 minutes. Tamin checked everyone's oxygen levels twice. Then they opened the hatch and stepped onto the moon's surface. The structures were even more impressive up close. They were at least 30 meters tall, smooth and translucent like glass, but they seemed to glow with a faint inner light. Tamin counted 15 of them arranged in a perfect circle around the crater floor. "The electromagnetic readings are coming from these," Minji said, checking her handheld scanner. "The energy signature is incredible. It is like nothing we have ever seen." Tamin approached the nearest crystal slowly. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. This was first contact with something alien. This was the moment that changed everything for humanity. He reached out his gloved hand and touched the smooth surface. Instantly, the entire crater exploded with light. The crystals began pulsing with brilliant colors. Holographic images burst into existence all around them, floating in the vacuum of space. Star maps, planetary systems, mathematical equations. And then Tamin saw something that made his blood run cold. It was Earth. But the continents were wrong. Africa and South America were connected. India was an island far from Asia. "Commander," Juno's voice cracked over the radio. "That map shows Earth from 65 million years ago. From the time of the dinosaurs." Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath their feet began to shake. The crystals were moving, shifting positions. Where the center of the circle had been, the lunar surface split open. Stairs appeared, leading down into darkness beneath the moon. A doorway. An invitation. Or perhaps a trap. Tamin stared into the black opening. Everything in his training told him to return to the ship and report this to Earth. But he knew that if they left now, they might never get another chance to learn the truth. "We go down," he said finally. "But we stay together and we stay alert. Whatever built this has been waiting for millions of years. Now it is time to find out why." The stairs went down for what felt like forever. Tamin counted 200 steps before he stopped counting. The walls around them glowed with a soft blue light, just bright enough to see. He kept waiting for the steps to end, but they just kept going deeper into the moon. "Commander, my oxygen is at 70%, Minji said from behind him. They had been walking for 15 minutes. "Mine too," Juno added. "We should turn back soon." But then the stairs ended. They stepped into a chamber so enormous that Tamin could not see the far walls. The ceiling stretched high above them, covered with lights that looked like stars. And strangest of all, Taming realized he could hear his own breathing differently. He checked his helmet display. This is impossible. There is atmosphere here. The sensors say it is breathable. That cannot be right, Minji said. We are inside the moon. There is no air inside the moon. But the readings were clear. Slowly, carefully, Taming removed his helmet. Cool air touched his face. He took a small breath, then a deeper one. It was thin, like breathing on top of a mountain, but it was air. The others removed their helmets too. They stood there breathing air that should not exist, in a room that should not be possible, looking at technology that humanity had not invented yet. The chamber was filled with devices. Tall panels covered in symbols lined the walls. Strange machines hummed quietly. In the center was a large platform with what looked like a display screen, though it was made of material Taming had never seen before. Juno walked to the nearest panel and touched it gently. Immediately it lit up. Symbols began flowing across its surface, changing and shifting. At first they meant nothing, but then slowly they began to transform into English letters and numbers. It is translating itself, Juno whispered in amazement. It is reading our minds somehow and showing us what we can understand. Taming approached the central platform. When he stepped onto it, the entire room came alive. Every panel activated. The star ceiling above them began moving, showing planets and moons orbiting. And then words appeared, floating in the air in front of them in simple English. This is a warning, Taming read aloud. His voice echoed strangely in the vast space. The message explained that an ancient civilization had lived throughout the solar system millions of years ago. They had cities on Mars, bases on Europa, settlements on Earth itself. They had been peaceful, curious, and advanced beyond anything humanity had achieved. Then something had come from deep space. The message called them the Harvesters. They were not alive in the way that humans understood life. They were machines, or perhaps something between machines and organisms. They traveled from star to star, searching for civilizations that had reached a certain level of technology. When they found such civilizations, they came and took everything. Resources, knowledge, technology, and life itself. They consumed entire worlds and then moved on to find the next one. How did they find civilizations? Minji asked quietly. More text appeared, as if answering her question. The Harvesters detected radio signals. They listened for electromagnetic broadcasts. Any civilization that sent signals into space was marking itself as a target. Juno's face went pale. We have been broadcasting radio and television signals into space since the 1930s. For almost 50 years, we have been telling them exactly where we are. The message continued. The ancient civilization had fought back but had been unprepared and divided. Different planets and moons had fought separately instead of together. One by one they had fallen. The survivors had built these archives as warnings for whoever evolved next on Earth, hoping they would be smarter and better prepared. Taming felt sick. How long do we have? If they detected our signals, when will they arrive? The platform began calculating, using Earth's current technology level and broadcast history as inputs. Numbers and equations flowed across the displays faster than they could follow. Then everything stopped. A single date appeared, glowing red in the air, 2084. They had 110 years. Suddenly the entire chamber shook violently. New lights began flashing across every surface. A deep sound, almost too low to hear, vibrated through the floor and into their bones. What is happening? Minji shouted. Taming ran to the nearest panel. His blood turned to ice when he read the new text appearing there. The archive just activated a transmission beacon. It is sending a signal into deep space right now. Juno grabbed his arm. What kind of signal? To who? Taming's hands were shaking as he read more. It is an activation signal. When intelligent life discovers the archive, it automatically transmits their location and technology level. It was meant to contact other survivors, other archives throughout the galaxy. But if the Harvesters can detect signals... Minji could not finish the sentence. They all understood. By coming here, by activating the archive, they had just sent a message into space announcing humanity's existence. The Harvesters might not arrive in 2084 after all. They might come much sooner. The flight back to Earth was the longest 3 days of Taming's life. Nobody spoke much. They had taken thousands of photographs of the archive. They had samples of the crystal material in special containers. They had copied as much data as their primitive computers could hold. But mostly they carried the weight of terrible knowledge. When they splashed down in the Pacific Ocean, they were immediately taken to a military base. No regular NASA personnel were there. No press. No celebration. Just men in dark suits and generals with serious faces. Within 6 hours, Tamin was sitting in a locked room in Washington with people he had only seen on television. The director of NASA was there. The Secretary of Defense. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And finally, the President of the United States himself walked in. Tamin showed them everything. The photographs of the crystal structures. The recordings from inside the archive. The translation of the warning message. The calculations showing when the harvesters might arrive. And worst of all, the proof that the archive had transmitted a signal into space. The room was silent for a long time after he finished. "If we tell people about this, there will be panic," the president said finally. "The stock market will crash. There will be riots. Society might collapse before these harvesters even arrive. But if we do not tell them, they cannot prepare," Tamin argued. "Humanity deserves to know." "Humanity will know," the Secretary of Defense said. "But not yet. Not until we have a plan." They debated for 2 days. Tamin barely slept. Finally, a decision was made. The truth would be hidden but not wasted. They would use the time to prepare humanity without explaining why. Project Sentinel was born in that locked room. Tamin was given command of the project. His official title was Special Advisor on Advanced Research. His real job was to save humanity without telling them they needed saving. The first task was recruiting scientists. They needed the smartest people on Earth, but they could not tell them the whole truth. At least not at first. In 1976, Tamin flew to Seoul and met with a young physicist named Hyun Kim. Hyun had published revolutionary papers on energy generation. Tamin offered him a position at a new research facility in Nevada. "What will I be working on?" Hyun asked. "New energy systems," Tamin said carefully. "Revolutionary technology that could change the world." That was true. He just did not mention that the technology came from an alien archive and that humanity's survival depended on it. By 1978, Tamin had recruited 15 key scientists. Sora Bae, an engineer from Busan, was developing new materials based on the crystal samples. Doyeon Choi, an astronomer from Seoul National University, was building a deep space monitoring network disguised as radio telescopes. The work was slow and frustrating. The archive's technology was so far ahead of human understanding that even copying it was difficult. It was like giving a computer manual to someone from the 1800s and asking them to build one. But gradually they made progress. Breakthroughs in computer processing came from understanding the archive's data storage. New materials that were lighter and stronger than anything before came from analyzing the crystal structure. Energy systems that were far more efficient appeared, based on principles found in the archive's power generators. To the world, these looked like normal scientific advancement. Nobody suspected they were actually preparing for an alien invasion. Tamin watched his daughter graduate from college. He attended his son's wedding. He celebrated holidays with his family and smiled at their jokes. But every night, he lay awake thinking about the secret he carried. He watched children playing in parks and wondered if they would live to see adulthood. He saw people arguing about politics and money and trivial things, and he wanted to shake them and tell them none of it mattered compared to what was coming. The years passed. 1980 became 1985. Project Sentinel grew larger. More scientists were recruited. Underground facilities were built in remote locations around the world. Some government leaders in other countries were quietly brought into the secret. Britain, France, the Soviet Union, Japan, South Korea. Enemies became reluctant allies when faced with extinction. Tamin grew older. His hair turned gray then white. He needed reading glasses. His knees hurt when he climbed stairs. But he kept working because stopping meant giving up, and giving up meant humanity died. Then, on a cold December night in 1984, his phone rang at 3 in the morning. It was Doyen from the monitoring station in New Mexico. "We found something," Doyen said. His voice was shaking. "On the deep space scanners. It is big, Tamin. Very big. And it is moving toward us." Tamin sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. "Are you certain? I have checked it 17 times. Whatever it is massive and artificial. And according to our calculations, it will be here much sooner than we thought." The nightmare was real. The harvesters were coming. Tamin stood in the monitoring station staring at the screen. The object was still incredibly far away, but the computers had calculated its speed and direction. It was definitely heading toward Earth. And it was not alone. The scanners had detected at least 12 massive objects traveling together in formation. "How long do we have?" Tamin asked. Doyen adjusted his calculations on the computer. "They are moving faster than we expected. Not 40 years. Maybe 25. Possibly less if they accelerate again. 25 years. It sounded like a long time, but Tameen knew it was not enough. Not nearly enough. Project Sentinel entered a new phase. Everything accelerated. The secret facilities that had been slowly built over the past decade now expanded rapidly. Tameen brought in Yuna Song, a brilliant construction engineer, to oversee the building of a massive underground complex beneath the Mojave Desert. It would serve as a factory, a research center, and a shelter all in one. Similar facilities were built around the world. Jaiwoo Nam supervised construction of another base in the Australian outback. To anyone who asked, they were mining operations or military research stations. Nobody questioned them too closely. By 1990, Tameen was 61 years old and completely exhausted. But he could not stop. He recruited younger people to help carry the burden. Miho Shin was 32 and one of the smartest strategic minds Tameen had ever met. He put Miho in charge of planning Earth's defense. "We need to study how the ancients failed," Miho said during one meeting. "We cannot just copy their technology. We need to learn from their mistakes." They spent years analyzing the archive's records. The answer became clear. The ancient civilization had been divided. Mars fought alone. Europa fought alone. Earth fought alone. The harvesters had destroyed them one world at a time. "We need to unite humanity," Tameen told the secret council that now oversaw Project Sentinel. Representatives from 15 countries sat around the table. "But we cannot just announce the threat. That will cause chaos. We need to build unity first, then reveal the danger." It was a dangerous gamble. Throughout the 1990s, Project Sentinel worked to create connections between nations. Joint space programs were proposed. International research initiatives were funded. The public saw increased cooperation between countries and thought it was normal progress. They had no idea it was preparation for war. Hannah Park joined the project in 1995. She was only 24 but already had 2 doctorate degrees in quantum computing. Tameen gave her access to the archive's computing technology and told her to push human computer science as far and as fast as possible. "We will need to hack their systems," Tameen explained. "The ancients never tried that. They only fought with weapons. But maybe we can do something they could not." The International Space Station became operational in 1998. To the public, it was a symbol of peaceful cooperation. In reality, it was a testing ground for defensive weapons and shield technology. Platforms disguised as satellites were launched, each one carrying systems designed to fight the harvesters. Tameen's wife died in 2003. He stood at her funeral knowing she had never learned the truth about his work. She had believed he was just a government advisor who traveled too much. He had wanted to tell her so many times, but the secret was too dangerous to share. By 2010, Tameen was 81 years old. He walked with a cane and his hands shook from age. But his mind was still sharp. He stood in the monitoring station with Doyen, who was now gray-haired and wearing thick glasses. "Show me the updated trajectory," Tameen said. Doyen pulled up the latest calculations. His face was grim. "They have accelerated again. New arrival estimate is 2025. Tameen felt his chest tighten. 15 years? We were supposed to have 25. "I know. I have checked the math 5 times. They will be here by 2025, maybe sooner." Tameen leaned heavily on his cane. 15 years was not enough time. Even with all their preparation, humanity was not ready. The weapons were not finished. The shields were not tested. Half the world's governments still did not know the truth. "We have no choice now," Tameen said quietly. "We have to tell everyone. All of humanity. We cannot keep this secret anymore." Miho, who had been listening nearby, stepped forward. "If we tell them now, we have 15 years to prepare together instead of hiding. It might be enough. Or it might tear the world apart," Doyen said. Tameen looked at the screen showing the approaching fleet. 12 massive ships, ancient and unstoppable, coming to harvest Earth like they had harvested countless worlds before. "Humanity deserves the truth," he said finally. "And they deserve the chance to fight back. Contact the president. Contact all the leaders. It is time to tell the world what is coming." January 15, 2025. Every television screen, every computer, every phone in the world showed the same broadcast. Tameen Park, now 96 years old and sitting in a wheelchair, spoke to humanity for the first time about what had been hidden for 50 years. He told them about the mission in 1974. About the crystal structures on the moon. About the ancient civilization that had been destroyed. About the harvesters coming to do the same to Earth. And about the decades of secret preparation that had been happening while the world went about its normal life. "I am sorry we kept this from you," Tameen said, his voice weak but steady. "But we needed time. And now time has run out. They will be here in 9 months. We must stand together or we will fall like the ancients did. The world's reaction was exactly what they had feared. Stock markets crashed. People rioted in some cities. Religious leaders declared it the end times. But something else happened too. Something Tameen had hoped for but had not dared to believe in. People came together. Scientists from every country offered to help. Factories that had been making cars and appliances switched to producing defense equipment. Millions of people volunteered for training. Nations that had been enemies for generations put aside their hatred to face the common threat. The Lunar Archive was open to international inspection. Teams of scientists from every continent walked through the crystal chamber and saw the proof with their own eyes. Telescopes around the world confirmed the approaching fleet. There was no denying it anymore. Miho coordinated the global defense network from a command center in Geneva. Hannah activated quantum computers hidden in facilities around the world, computers that had been built using principles from the archive. Yuna and Jaiwoo opened the underground factories that had been waiting for this moment. Admiral Soho Kong was given command of Earth's space fleet. Ships that had been secretly built and hidden in orbit were revealed. They were not elegant or beautiful. They were weapons built for one purpose only. Narration was the best pilot humanity had. At 31 years old, she had trained in secret for 15 years. Now she would lead the fighter squadrons that would defend Earth. The harvesters arrived on September 3, 2025. 12 massive ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. Each one was the size of a small city, dark and ancient, covered in technology that had destroyed 1,000 worlds. They moved toward Earth with terrible purpose. The battle began beyond the moon, in the same space where Tameen had first discovered the archive 51 years earlier. Earth's fleet engaged them with everything they had. Nuclear missiles, plasma cannons, energy weapons designed from archive technology. The harvesters' shields absorbed most of it. Their return fire was devastating. 3 Earth ships were destroyed in the first hour. Then 5 more. On Earth, people watched the battle on screens. They saw their defenders dying in space. Parents held their children. Strangers held hands. Everyone waited to see if humanity would survive the night. Nari led her fighter squadron in close, dodging the harvester weapons. They were trying to find weak points in the massive ships. But the shields were too strong. Nothing was getting through. In the command center, Hannah was working frantically at her quantum computer. "I need more time," she shouted. "I almost have access to their systems." "We do not have more time," Miho replied. Another Earth ship exploded on the monitors. Then Hannah's computer screen flashed green. "I am in. I am inside one of their ships." The ancient civilization had never tried to hack the harvesters. They had only fought with weapons. But humanity had quantum computers and 50 years of studying the enemy. Hannah sent a virus into the harvester ship's control system, a virus designed specifically to attack their ancient programming. The ship stopped moving. Its weapons went silent. And then, slowly, it turned and fired on the other harvester ships. It worked. Hannah screamed. "We control it." With one harvester turned against them, the tide of battle changed. Earth's fleet pressed the attack. Nari's squadron targeted the damaged ships. One by one, the harvesters began to fall back. After 3 days of continuous fighting, the remaining harvester ships retreated into deep space. They had never encountered prey that fought back like this. They had never failed before. Humanity had won. Tameen watched the news from his hospital bed. Minji and Juno sat beside him, all 3 of them old and tired but alive to see this moment. "We did it," Minji whispered, crying. Tameen smiled. "Humanity did it. We just gave them a chance." He died peacefully 3 days later in his sleep. The morning of his death, the Lunar Archive activated one final time. A new message appeared, one that had been waiting for a civilization strong enough to survive. It showed coordinates to other archives throughout the galaxy, left by other survivors, other species who had fought the harvesters and won. An invitation to join them among the stars. The secret that began in 1974 became humanity's greatest achievement. Not because they hid the truth but because they used the time wisely. And when the moment came, humanity proved they deserved their place in the universe.